What's good, people? It is your boy, Jonah, one of the most authentic preachers you ever heard, and you already know it's another episode of Church from the Other Side. And today I'm going to be mad controversial. I'm going to talk about why evangelical expression of Christianity is dying off. I'm going to talk about it. Because personally, I can't help but feel like evangelical Christians are losing the culture right now. You know, they're losing their voice. They're losing people's respect. People hate evangelicals, y'all. Because people basically blame you guys for Trump. And ever since then, you guys have been losing. You've been losing battle after battle. But even before Trump became the source of contention in America, y'all was already losing, even before then. And you've been losing because you refuse to, upgrade yourselves to be relevant to today's culture. Basically, they're like, the old Catholic Church set in their traditions, still singing the same songs, still complaining about what's on TV and the music and the culture. You keep talking like that, you're just going to date yourself, and you wonder why people may not take you seriously. And here's the thing, what I'm talking about, it doesn't have to apply to all evangelicals, because I know many evangelicals that have changed for the better. You know something, I'm practically an evangelical myself, and I agree with most of the things y'all do, but of course, if you've been following me for a while on my channel, you know I'm more in the kingdom camp than anything else. Evangelicalism is a little too tame for you, boy. I like to rock the boat. I like to speak in tongues and stuff. But anyway, the point of this isn't to make evangelicals out to be the bad guys, because they're good people. I'm just here to point out some things that I noticed. So if the shoe fits, I'm going to tell you right now, don't get mad at me. I'm just a messenger. Instead of getting offended, you should, be thinking deeply on what I'm about to say, because I might save your church from going extinct, for real, if y'all got ears to hear. So let me break it down for you. America is not the same place that it was, 20 years ago or 60 years ago. A lot has changed since that golden age of America when the church ruled everything. Right? Since then, we have more spiritual paths in this land. We have more nationalities. It's not just white and black anymore. You know what I'm saying? There's brown people. There's pink and green people. We have different values in America. We have different nations. We're more conscious now in America. We think about other people that are different from us. Like we think about the immigrants and the poor people and all that stuff. So America just sees the world different than it did like back in the day, 20 or maybe 60 years ago. And America did need to change in some regards, because it wasn't a perfect nation as some people thought it was a perfect nation, but it really wasn't. It needed to change to accommodate, the new America. And when the world begins to change, right, a wise person will change when they realize that, new things are happening. Like a doctor, for instance. Doctors know the medical field is always changing, and they need to stay up to date on new technologies and methods. So they're always like upgrading their skills, because, they don't want to be stuck in the past. You don't want to be using last year's method, And like I said, only a fool holds on to the old and stays in the past. And those people, they get left behind. But that's what a lot of Christians do, honestly. Like a lot of Christians are living in the past. It's like someone's grandparents still using flip phones in 2020 when we have smartphones. You got to get with the times. Like I said, a lot of churches are living in the past and they keep fighting for things to stay the same. Why do you think the slogan "Keep America Great" is so appealing to people? Because they want to stay in the past where they're comfortable. But here's the thing, things are not the same anymore. And they're never going back to the way they were. Like, even if we were to have another great awakening, which I believe can happen, and, people started to come back to God and started, living for God, even if that were to happen, which I believe it can, things are not going to go back to the way they were. they're going to go back to, they're going to come to there's going to be a new breed of Christian who are going to want to do things in a new way, right? A way that the older generation didn't do and kind of messed up on. We're actually going to undo the wrongs that were done before by the church. And understand, there was a time, right, where the church had the most influence in America. Like, y'all basically had America in the palm of your hands. But the problem was, they never solidified the rule. They never built a strong Christian America. They built a weak Christian America. And there was a lot of negligence. There was a lot of taking things for granted. And now, people are falling away from the faith that they once had. In churches, right, we need to take responsibility for, we got to admit that we're responsible for people falling away from the church. I mean, yeah, secular, media or whatever played their part in indoctrinating people, but you didn't do a lot to keep people in church either. You may not want to hear this. Some people don't want to hear this, but if you don't have some type of anointing or some type of way to draw people, they're just going to leave. Facts. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants to go to a church where nothing is happening. Trust me, I'm a youth pastor. I've realized that I always have to keep people engaged, and of course it applies to kids, but it just applies to people today. You got to keep them engaged, right? And another thing is we have to gain people's trust. We have to reintroduce ourselves all over again and show people what we have to offer, because people don't know the church anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's not like the back in the day where people just felt like they could always trust the church. You know what I'm saying? They don't know us anymore. And if we don't fight for the heart of America, someone else will, and that person will turn America against the church. Right? You're already seeing it happen today. People are labeling Christianity a white supremacist religion, and they're calling out evangelicals, you know what I'm saying, for a lot of things they don't like about America. So here's the thing, the church is in need of change. And I'm not just talking about like a change in doctrine. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a change in the way it engages the culture. Because if you don't think the church is in need of change and that it's perfect the way it is, and that everyone else is the problem, here's the thing, you might be the problem. Because what is our goal? Our goal is to win the world to Jesus Christ. And to do that, you're going to have to listen to people. You're going to have to maybe add another perspective to your viewpoint. Like I said, I'm not talking about changing your stance on biblical things. Obviously, keep the biblical standard. I'm talking about changing things like music, teaching on relevant topics, getting into social justice type of things, along with the preaching of the gospel. Because honestly, I feel like a lot of churches are refusing to be relevant, and that's their big mistake. For instance, nowadays, the world is focused on Black Lives Matter. There's a cry of an unheard people, Black people feeling unheard. But I'm surprised how many Christians are sticking with the All Lives Matter chant, instead of listening to these people. And here's the thing about it. You don't have to agree with everything Black Lives Matter is about, because I personally don't agree with everything. But the point is, it's like they're not feeling heard, and it's like they want someone to listen to them. And unfortunately, it's not always the church at this time. We have a chance to be relevant, to show hurt people you care, but instead, you want to go against the norm. You want to do your own thing for whatever reason. But what does that do to your ministry? What does it do to your ministry to go against the grain and ignore people who are hurting? You might get an applaud from the 4 people in your church or whatever, but then you wonder why no one wants to go to your church. No one wants to go because you're not relevant. You're not doing things that people care about. You know what I'm saying? Christians do this kind of thing all the time. I feel like a lot of Christians are just about staying in that Christian bubble, right? The Christian agenda has really just been trying to, keep church people comfortable. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to be uncomfortable. But the reality is, it's like, this is a new world, and you're going to have to get uncomfortable if you're going to want to do the things that Jesus Christ has commanded us to do. You know, like a lot of evangelicals, man, they love to talk about how abortion is wrong and being anti-abortion, and I'm 100% agree with that. But how can you say abortion is wrong but not have a serious discussion about adoption? You know what I'm saying? You want to protest abortion, but how many of y'all are adopting kids? Or at least putting up money to, like, you know, fund, Christian orphanages or some type of adoption agency or something, you know, putting money towards that. Y'all don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Because you're stuck in traditions. You're not doing anything practical. And that's nothing new. Like, a lot of times the church has always been behind the curve, you know? Like, when people wanted to upgrade the music of the church and, like, bring, you know, some type of more peppy music into the church, y'all want to stick with hymns. You know, there's been a great battle. Like, we'd have, like, worship teams now, but that was a battle for a lot of churches to get worship teams into the church. They were just stuck on their hymns. You know, people wanted to wear t-shirts and jeans to church, and a lot of people said, y'all need to wear suits. A lot of churches are still into that. Like, you know, you gotta dress to impress the Lord. Like, ridiculous. You know, some churches are still reading the King James only. And don't get me wrong, I like the King James. However, the reality is, a lot of people are not understanding that. You know, sometimes you gotta do what is gonna make people comfortable to reach the people who are not being reached. You know, it's not always about you and what you want. You know what I'm saying? It's really about people who you need to make Jesus as accessible to people as you can, is basically what I'm saying. And that's why evangelical Christianity is dying off, because it's dated. You know what I'm saying? And of course, it doesn't apply to every evangelical church. If the shoe don't fit, don't get offended. But the majority are like this. You know what I'm saying? We need to get out of the traditional thinking and get into kingdom thinking, because the kingdom is timeless and it can adapt to any period or place without compromising the sanctity of God's word or God's truth. You know, doing church like you did back in the 1960s is dumb, because the 1960s are over. We need to be ready to evangelize a new world, right? Change is inevitable. The way things are now, they won't be like that forever. You know, there was a time where people thought Polaroid cameras would always be in style. So much so that Polaroid, the company, didn't even upgrade when, like, they knew that the digital camera was coming out. And now they're almost a dead company. Some of y'all don't even know what Polaroid is. It's just like one of those long forgotten things. Like Blockbuster. A lot of people don't know what that is. They couldn't, you know, keep up with the new times. You know, don't be like the Pharisees, right? God was doing something new in the earth, and they couldn't keep up. You know, they stayed in their traditions. You know what ended up happening to them? They end up dying off. You know what I'm saying? They end up losing just because something new was happening and they were stuck in their traditions. The church can be the same. Like, sometimes the church is so stuck in their traditions that they miss out on the new things that God is doing, and they end up being irrelevant. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, like, we gotta just be ready for the modern times. Just be moved by the Spirit and not so caught up in your traditions. Don't miss out on what God is doing right now. And that's all I'm gonna say, y'all. Peace.